This is Lisa Black, and I'm here to talk to you about my 8 rules of pacing your thriller. So in 5 minutes, so we're going to go fast. Number 1 rule is forget real life. Never mind that if someone bonked me on the head or I stumbled over a dead body or something like that, I spend a couple days in bed drinking tea or maybe wine. You can't do that in a book. You have to leave out the baths, the snacks, extended meals, that kind of thing. Just leave it out. Number 2 is action doesn't have to be car crashes or explosions every couple of paragraphs. As long as your story is moving forward and your character is moving forward, you don't need a constant barrage of noise and activity. Number 3 is setting the scene begins with the very first word. As we all know, backstory belongs later. Leave that to work in on subsequent chapters. Number 4 is less is more. How much description do we really need? Obviously, you want your reader to be able to picture the scene and understand the logistics of where your character is moving and going and everything like that. But we don't need endless description of what people are wearing or what kind of flowers grow outside their window or things like that. 5 is it's about time. Try not to have large lags of time between events in your books. If you're writing a thriller, I always think it's a good idea to try and fit the entire story in the smallest amount of time possible or appropriate to the story. Number 6 is never repeat yourself. I feel strongly about this one. Never tell the reader something that they already know. Even if one character has to catch another character up, the reader doesn't need to hear it all over again. Number 7 is the die hard rule, as I call it. Just keep going. As long as the story is moving forward, your readers will not be able to put the book down. And the last rule, rule number 8, is one size does not fit all. You don't have to force a breathless pace of nonstop action on your story if that's not appropriate to the story or to the character. So above all, as always, in writing, do what's best for you. And that's my 8 rules of pacing your novel. And I hope you find it helpful, and I hope it turns out to be helpful in your writing. So thank you for listening. Have a good day.
Hi there, I'm Liv Constantine, and I'm here with my sister Valerie Constantine, and together we are Liv Constantine. And we are here to give you some of our tips on co-writing. So the first tip that we want to share is to pick someone that you like. And it definitely helps if you're on the same time zone. But seriously, aside from choosing who your co-author is going to be, one of the first steps that you want to take is to agree upon the roles and who is going to do what in your partnership. There are a lot of different ways people work. We've known co-writing teams in which one person writes the entire first draft and the other does the editing. We know another team where they are together on Google Hangouts and they write absolutely every single sentence together. And then other people do characters, chapters. So whatever you want to do, whatever works for you, that's just something that you want to agree on in the beginning so that you're both very clear on what the rules of the game are. Next tip is going to come from Val.
So the next tip is to agree on a work schedule that you both can adhere to. So for example, Lynn and I decide each week how many words we're going to write daily. And so by the end of the week, what are we going to have in terms of word count? Doesn't matter if I write more words on Monday than I do on Tuesday, just so that by the end of the week, we each have our quota, we've met our quota of words. And the other thing in terms of agreement on work schedule is key dates. So for example, when are we going to be finished with the first draft, the second draft, when will it be turned in to the editor, that type of thing. Your turn, Lynn.
Okay. Yes, so that's very important. And again, going sort of along with knowing what the rules of your collaboration are. The third thing that we would recommend, no matter how close you are, and Valerie and I obviously are very close, we're sisters and best friends, it's a great idea to get a collaboration agreement. We hired a literary attorney to do this for us. And it covers things, especially if you're writing under one pen name, as we are, then you need to understand what happens if one of you decides that you don't want to continue to write anymore. Does the other person get to continue using the name? What if one of you wants to write on a different schedule? If you have a dispute, all of these things that in the beginning, you might not think are ever going to be an issue. It just makes it a lot cleaner and more clear cut if you put it in writing, you both agree to it, and then that will save a lot of heartache down the road. Right.
The next tip is that you really need to be thoughtful and kind when giving feedback, and especially during editing sessions. They can get pretty intense, as all of you who write know. So we try to be really respectful of each other and make our criticism constructive criticism and not mean or bullying. And of course, we've had disagreements about certain passages or even the way that a story might be going. But we both try to present our case in a reasonable way that isn't in an attacking sort of way or with any hostility. And so far, we've really been pretty successful. And at the end of the day, it comes down to what would the character do? What is really best for the story? And that has always been a way that we've been able to, in a very amicable way, settle any kind of disagreements that we've had.
Definitely. And I would add to that, you really want to feel like you are in a safe space with your co-writer. So you don't want to be nervous that they're going to write something back and say, oh, this is terrible or amateurish. Valerie and I both are at a point in our collaboration where we're so comfortable with each other and we feel so accepted that we'll share first draft. We'll know because we're trying to get the bones down of a story. And if we're on a particularly fast schedule, we can't always wait until it's polished. But I'm never worried that she's going to write back and say, what the heck is this? It just doesn't happen that way. We'll always be able to find something good and easily, and we both will say, feel free to edit, feel free to add, and neither are offended when the other one comes back and says, this is great, but I just sort of, play around with this sentence. And it makes it a lot easier and a lot more efficient as well in the writing together. So the last tip that we have is to have fun. There are so many benefits that we find in writing together. Valerie and I have a lot of laughs as we go through our plots and our development. We can call each other when we see a bad review that's upsetting, and we can commiserate with each other. We get to celebrate all of the successes and the joys together. It's so much fun traveling together. It's not lonely. We get to be on the road and having fun. So we highly recommend collaboration. And
I would say one more thing on that, working together. There is nobody who knows what it's like to get your edits back like your co-author. And boy, do we have a day of, if you write, what kind of day we have. So it's really great to be able to share that as well, that frustration. Of course, then by the next day, you know how that is. Well,
exactly.
She was probably right about 80% of it, right?
And we tease the editor. She knows that. We love her, and she knows that, we don't really call her or write back for the first day. I think everybody sort of gets that numb feeling when you get a manuscript full of edits, but thank God for editors because they make the books better. So that's it. We hope that this has been helpful. Any questions, you can always contact us at livconstantine.com or on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We love talking and connecting with everyone. Thanks. Happy writing.
Hello, thriller writers. I'm Karna Bodman, and I wanted to tell you about best advice I ever got, and that is you never fail until you quit. I first wrote 2 kind of lighthearted stories, and I racked up about 40 rejections from various agents and editors. I'd read about a lot of other people had bigger failures and setbacks. Let me give you a couple of examples to think about. A woman was demoted from her job as a news anchor. They said she wasn't fit for television. Who was it? Oprah Winfrey. Now, there was a child who couldn't speak until he was almost 4 years old. His teacher said, oh, he'd never amount to much. Who was it? Albert Einstein. Now here's a good one for you. A young man was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. Who was that one? Walt Disney. Now let's get back to writers, okay? His first book was rejected by 27 publishers. Who was that? Dr. Seuss. So look, I'm sure we've all had disappointments, but I decided that when I really wanted to write novels, I got very serious about writing thrillers. I had worked for the government at one point, National Security Council, and I attended a lot of writers' conferences. I wrote my first novel, and I did go to a conference, and I made a pitch to an editor, and she liked my story. We ended up with a deal. I now have 5 published thrillers. My latest is Trust But Verify. It's out in hardback, ebook, audio formats. Now, finally, I hope to see you at the next Thriller Fest.
Hi, my name is Chris Goff. I am one of the Rogue Women writers. When I first started writing, I had a mentor named Lee Carr who told me that there were 5 steps to writing great dialogue, things you really should do. And you should do 1 or 2 of the following things with every piece of dialogue. 1, advance the plot. 2, characterize the characters. 3, create suspense and intensify the conflict. 4, reveal motivation. Or 5, control the pace. Pick it up. If you can do 1 thing with each piece of dialogue, you will not have the chit chat that sometimes you'll see in books where people come on stage and they're like, hi, and the other person says, hi, and it goes back and forth. How are you today? Great, it's such a beautiful day. The sky is so blue. And then they finally get to the heart of what they're supposed to be talking about. So if you can do 2 things, you can make the dialogue incredibly effective. And I'm going to give just an example out of 2 of my books, Dark Waters, the first book in my thriller series. In this one, Special Agent Jordan has come on the scene of the murder or the shooting in Dizengoff Square that happens when she first arrives in Israel. And she's got to go and introduce herself to the policeman that's on scene there, the Israeli police officer. Special Agent Jordan, she announced in Hebrew to one of the guards stationed at the edge of the square. She held up her badge. Who's in charge here? Tall, thin man kneeling beside Klein's body signaled to the guard to let her through. Detective Noah Weissman, Homicide Division. Doherty informed me that you were coming and would be following the investigation. It makes sense, seeing as one of the victims is yours. He pointed to the body. It was my understanding Klein was headed back to the United States. That's correct. She didn't add that Klein should have already been stateside. What about the other man, she asked, the one who slit Klein's throat? Who is he? No ID yet. We think he's Palestinian. We're running facial recognition. So far, no hit. What about the shooter? Did you catch him? Weissman shook his head. Whoever she was, she set up on the 4th floor and managed to elude the soldiers. She? How do you know it was a woman? A young soldier stationed in the kitchen saw her. He claimed she identified herself as working for the Israeli police counter-terror unit. Did he get a description? He claimed she had a nice set of tits. Oh, and black hair. So if you look at the dialogue or listen to the dialogue, you'll see that in every piece I tried to give you extra information. Characterize the character. I gave her name. Who's in charge here? When she asks that and he introduces himself, he sets the stage. He's the one in charge of that crime scene. And he tells her that he's been informed she's coming. And it makes sense because one of the victims is yours. And so she learns that one of the victims is an American. So it continues on. You can look at it and you can listen to it again and see if I did what I tried to do, which was move the book along. In Red Sky, I do the same thing with the Russians, who are waiting kind of off stage. The plane has come down, it's crashed, and they have a guy at the crime scene because the plane was intentionally brought down. Vasyl Kozachenko listened to the rustling of leaves in the dense overhead tree canopy and considered what he just heard. "You're joking," he said. "How's it possible for this to happen?" The body should have been destroyed. It should have taken weeks to identify them. "I found it hard to believe myself," said Stas, the man on the other end of the phone. "What am I supposed to do now? Intervene?" Was it too much to ask? Kozachenko paced the length of the truck. "You must prevent a transfer of the bodies to the Americans at any cost. We have no way of knowing how much he knows and if he wrote it down. We can't afford to take chances." "It's impossible, sir. They've sent someone here to investigate, a woman. She was caught rooting through the pockets of the dead agent, and now she insists on staying with the bodies until the transfer comes through." "Did she find anything?" "Only identification papers, but she insists McClaskey could be carrying classified information." "Use your authority, Stas. Pull this woman aside and question her. Find out what she knows." "My hands are tied, sir. There's nothing I can do. Captain Melnick has taken charge." So in that, you find out a lot of information about what was happening at the scene, as far as what was happening underneath the action that was going on when you were in Race of Jordan's point of view. So again, if you use those tips, your dialogue should be really strong. Good luck.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gail Linz, and I write spy thrillers. I want to talk to you today about suspense, which is probably one of the most difficult subjects to discuss in writing any book at all, and certainly in terms of thrillers where suspense is critical. It rises to the point of, gosh, maybe I better learn as much as I can about it in order to write the kinds of books that I love to read. Very simple. I want to give you one particular tip, and very simply, it is this. Villain equals menace, and the hero/heroine equals jeopardy. Those are two very important concepts that if you can remember them and put them in your brain, if you don't outline, and if you do outline, make sure as you go through your outline, you're aware of them. In a mystery or thriller, actually in just about any kind of book, there is someone who wants something that will drive the action. In a thriller or a mystery, it's someone who has murdered somebody, is planning to do something terrible, has committed a crime, and that person is always in the position of protecting himself or herself. So when somebody intrudes on what they've done or are planning to do, they become menacing. The hero and the heroine become caught up in someone else's story of trying to cover up or trying to do harm. So that's where the jeopardy comes in. From the beginning of a book, there is going to be jeopardy, whether it's obvious or not, there is jeopardy. At the same time, the hero or the heroine or a combination of the two, because for one thing, I like to write books that have both a hero and a heroine, primary hero, primary heroine. They are going to be in jeopardy. And they may not know that right away, but it is going to become obvious to them. In the beginning of the book, the first act, the villain is trying to stop the hero and heroine from figuring out what's going on or uncovering his deeds. So he is the hunter. By the middle of the book, by the second act, the hero and heroine are really starting to figure out what's going on. They're starting to not just react to what the villain is doing. They are actively looking into the various clues that you have planted, the actions, the overheard conversations, the data analysis, whatever you have in your book. The middle part is where things start to even out. And by the third act, the hero and the heroine have figured out enough. They're no longer just reactive. They really are active. They are becoming the hunters too. So in the third act, you have a villain who is hunting and the hero and heroine who are hunting to uncover what is going on, what has happened, and what will happen. And it leads to an awful lot of suspense and reader enjoyment. I hope that this is helpful to you.